I'm Darlene Hansen, and I am manager of the trainer of the empowerment team. And I run the CAC group with my partner, William. William, want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is William Del Rosario, and I am a Hispanic Filipino male in my 20s with short black hair, brown eyes, and I wear glasses. I'm an intern with TVU and a multimodal communicator who uses augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC, via typing and my iPad. Thank you for making the time to be here.
Thanks, William. I wanted to remind everyone before we get started too much, I also have Kylie here, and she's going to be in the background or the foreground if we call her up, doing any of your technical questions. Okay, so just write them in the chat. She'll answer as our DVU admin person. And then also, if you, well, either way, I want you all to go down to the interpretation globe at the bottom of your screen, or in the circle with the 3 dots, it'll say interpretation, and click on the kind of interpretation or sounds you want. So if you're English speaking, pick English. If you want to hear the Spanish speaking, pick Spanish. Okay, so we do have a Spanish speaking translation for everyone. Great, now I gotta find my prompts. All right, so today, we want to talk, we just kind of left today as an open forum, and I have some talking points, but I got to ask real quick, digress. Gilda, do you want to talk now or later?
I can make the announcement right now, if that's okay.
Let's do that. Mm-hmm.
So I just want to announce that Disability Voices United is going to be having a conference. It's called Empowerment in Praxis, and it's going to be a conference on self-determination and supported decision-making. We'll be having 2 of them. We will be hosting one in Oakland on September 11th, Thursday from 8:30 to 4:30, and another one in Southern California on November 19th, which is a Wednesday, at the California Endowment in Los Angeles. And I will drop or I don't know if Keely, if you have it up, but if not, I can drop the flyer in the chat.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat after.
And registration is open. So if you please share it with your networks, and if you live close by, hope to see you there.
Is there a charge for this?
There is.
And there is center funded?
It is not. We are not vendor through Regional Center, but if you're in self-determination program, if it's in your spending plan, that's one way that you can get it covered.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Gilda. That's exciting. And yes, Keely will be sharing the link, the registration flyer, and then you'll get all the information off of that. And I'm assuming, is the cost in the flyer, Gilda?
I don't think it's in the flyer, but I believe it is $50.
50?
For families and self-advocates.
Okay. So that's 50 is estimated cost right now. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So here we go. We're always talking about the challenges that people experience when they have to use augmentative communication. And one of the themes that William and I hear about, struggle with, talk about a lot is, in fact, I think William, your mom brought this up the other day for me myself, but why do you as communicators or individuals who have communication differences of any kind, why do you have to prove you're smart? Why is it necessary to prove that? So wanted to hear from you all, or whoever has had this experience for themselves, as to what do you think that's all about? I forget why I even had this example the other day, but I think it was with my grandson, and he was Reading, oh, I know, he was, Otto, from Autolana, he has his logo that says, everyone belongs here, and it's in rainbow colors. And he's been looking at that on my shirt since he was born, since he was an infant. He always stare at it. Now he's 4.5, and I had a shirt on with that logo on it, a different shirt, and he kept looking at it, and I said, "Are you looking at my shirt because you see the same words?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I said, "You remember what it says?" And he says, "Yeah." And so he said what it said. And William and his mom were saying, why doesn't anyone doubt that he knows how to read those words? Why doesn't he have to prove that he's smart? So hence this question. Anybody got any ideas on this, or struggles, or you raise your hand if you want, or and we'll unmute you, or put your information in the chat. But some of the things that I think comes up is that there's a double standard, right? That's what we were kind of talking about, William and his mom and I. For if you're non-speaking, you have to be taught. If you are a speaking person, someone who doesn't use communication difference, have a difference in communication, people assume you're learning, right? So people think you have to demonstrate it in order to be understand it before you can be taught it. Understand something about it before you can be taught it. The other thing is that people show you all have to show consistent performance before it's trusted, right? So Sarah's got something. Thanks for joining us, Sarah. What are you thinking?
Hi. My son's 3 years old, and he was nonverbal, but he started to talk. And people were teasing him that he was in a therapy session and he was being made fun in his OT session. And he came up to me and he said, "Mommy, why am I not smart?" And I was like, "You are smart. What makes you not smart? You're a quick learner. You're amazing. You may be learning at your own pace, but not everybody's going to learn the same speed you're learning."
Yeah.
So I kind of took him out of that OT and changed it only because of that situation that they let happen.
And William, if you want to chime in on any of these conversations, because I know you've had these experiences, no pressure, but feel free. I think too that this idea that you have to pass a standardized test in order to get access to reading, get access to AAC, get access to so many things. Whereas if you are a person who isn't a regional center client, nobody says, "Oh, we'll start talking to you when you pass a standardized test," right? They just do. So for some reason, these standardized tests have become a big picture. Will says, acknowledge the moment. What do you want to expand on that, Will? Where are you?
Yeah, I felt acknowledgement, when other people, why I feel I have to prove is just so that they would acknowledge me as a person.
Oh, okay. So they're acknowledging you as the person.
Yes.
Okay. And if they do you feel like when people don't think you're smart, they acknowledge you less? Yeah. Get left out a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Let's see, William's saying something, so I'm gonna hang for a second. I was just with an individual who spells to communicate, and when we're just talking about general stuff, she was telling these great stories and everything was all good. And then her mom says, ask her this question. And so then the question became about her own self. It was about her birthday party, but it was about her. And she got her face, with her facial expressions showed she was shy. She did not want to jump in. She didn't want to say anything. And she would hit a few letters and she'd go, no. And then she'd hit another one and she'd go, no. And just kept doing that and doing that. And finally I said, do you not want to share this? And she said, yes. And I said, okay. So what came out in the conversation and kind of problem solving this with her is that she's shy. She doesn't mind talking about other stuff, but she's not ready to talk about herself yet. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Thanks, Glenis. Okay, let's see what William's got. William says, why do we have to demonstrate intelligence? We should assume desire to learn, even if it's in a different way. That's a great point, William.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's almost like people are, the double side of it is people are saying you have to be worthy through intelligence of having an opinion, of having a service, of having therapy, of having opportunities, of having friends, whatever it is that you want.
It's like you have to prove that you're smart to other people.
To be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which again makes no sense, right? How old is your son, Sarah?
He's 3.
Oh, he's just 3. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that to you? He said, Mommy, why are they saying I'm not smart?
Yeah, he barely started talking like 2 months before his 3rd birthday in March. And he's been saying a lot of words now. So I was shocked when he came up to me and he told me that during his therapy session.
God. Okay, then. Yeah, too bad for those people. They're going to have a long road ahead of them. He's not. He's going to fly. That's really great. That's really great. Alvar says, I think it's often because it's less typical to be non-speaking. So people make all sorts of assumptions rather than presume competence. I still experience it now. And I think a large part of that is infantilization. I'm a grown man and people treat me like a small child, like they treat my less than 2-year-old nephew. All the time, since people treat me like a small child all the time, since it seems they assume lack of speech is lack of ability, competence, and intelligence. Yeah. William says to you, Sarah, for your son, wow, he's awesome. And Debbie says, I would like to hear about and see more examples of autistic individuals who use both verbal language and also employ AAC as needed. How were they supported to develop this AAC support? Perhaps.
What is AAC?
So AAC is augmentative and alternative communication. So if you use a device or a whiteboard or sign language, anything other than speaking, it's called AAC. Okay, so I think what you're saying, Debbie, is something about a session. I love the suggestions about verbal, when to use verbal versus AAC. That's a great topic. And I think, William, you should talk about your journey, how you're doing the opposite. If you want to, that is. I'm telling you what to talk about. Karen says, I have a client now who uses both, took 2 years to get the AAC specialist to understand what she needed. Good point. My goddaughter, this is Jose. My goddaughter is not able to communicate verbally, but I see her being able to navigate technology on a daily basis. I don't understand how access, support, and practice earlier couldn't have helped us advance her communication. Does she use AAC now, Jose? Okay, good. Whew, what I was going to say. Oh my gosh. Good. Elena says, welcome to ableism. Yep. That's exactly what it is, Elena. It's ableism. It's you do it this way. And even then, I'm not sure that it's it's not even a valid form of ableism because you're held to a different standard. I think William was typing, so I'm going to hang for 1 second. William says, funny the world uses verbal, and AAC having autism shouldn't limit you to one form of communication. Yep. All of us use multiple modes of communication, and all of us do better in one than the other, or maybe two better than the other three, whatever. And Brenda
With
says
the
very true, William.
with the communication, my dad has stage 4 cancer, colon cancer, so he's not able to really talk a lot no more. So he uses sign language right now, and that's how we kind of communicate with them.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, it's just natural, right? To step in and do something resourceful. Blanca says, my daughter is deaf, and because she uses ASL, professionals aren't supporting AAC for her. Well, number one, okay, sign language is AAC, but I get what you're saying. You're saying that they won't give her a device because she can use sign language, Blanca? Okay, well, the reality is that most of the country doesn't use sign language. So, and she has language delays. Okay. So, I could do a whole assessment battery here, but I'm not going to do that. But basically what I'm thinking is that everyone doesn't understand sign language, number one. If she was to have a language delay because she needs a visual system, an AAC system with a device technology would provide her with input that might help her express herself better than having to initiate the movements of sign. But that's just a theory. I don't know for sure because I don't know your daughter. But anyways, there's lots of things that could support at least having an assessment. Valerie says, unprocessed and automatic answers get in the way. Intent confused when one has stock response to a question. Non-intentional, unprocessed, yes/no replies related to processing confound others. Word finding difficulties, gaze, pointing, and verbalization can be at odds with one another. Idiosyncratic communication requiring knowledge of the past context to understand meaning. And different output with different communication partners further complicates it. Everything's very complicated. But I think that getting your point of getting to that automatic, especially if you're a speaking person, that automatic stuff that comes out and it's not reliable, people are not really on board with understanding the significance of that in your lives. And that's what I think you're always talking about, huh? William says, I'm still learning to speak and am adding that to my modalities. So that was where someone had said something about using both. So William learned how to use AAC, and now he's learning how to speak as opposed to speak and then AAC. So it's multiple modalities. That's what we're talking about here, right? I'm gonna hang for a second, see if anybody else is putting anything in there. Elena says, side note, from a verbal autistic standpoint, I thought the portrayal of the nonverbal AAC autistic woman in Accountant was awesome, especially when it comes to intelligence and possibilities. Hopefully it has an overall positive impact. I just saw that last weekend. Anybody else see The Accountant 1 or 2? 2 specifically, because she's much more part of 2. Anybody else have an opinion? Nobody else saw it? You guys got to watch it. It's on Prime, I think. I think it was Prime. Might have been Paramount Plus. I'm trying to remember now. It's a gruesome movie, so there's a lot of violence in it. But okay, I saw it for free with the Miracle Project showing Culver City a couple weeks ago. Okay. All right, very good. Yeah. So no spoiler alerts, but the point is that it's a movie, number one. So the entire thing is like over the top, right? It's not a real story. So you have to remember that. But the way they use AAC and the way the individuals who use AAC are incorporated into the movie and their role is really great. So check it out if you can handle the shoot ups and gore. Close your eyes. One of the few times I can say I liked a sequel better. Me too, actually, yeah. All right, okay. Let's look at another question here. I want to do the third one at William. Okay, so we kind of talked about this a little bit, but this is about presuming competence. So people say we should presume competence, right? We advocate for that now. Everyone doesn't agree with us or doesn't do it on their own, but we are advocating for presuming competence. Oh, Carrie, the name is Accountant 2. That's the name of that movie. So we want to presume competence, and we want people to presume competence. But have you ever had a situation or a person who says, yes, I presume competence, and they talk to you respectfully, and then there's that until something else happens. So maybe you're in a meeting and they're presuming competence and you're doing your person-centered plan and they're talking with you, and then it comes to the decision-making part and they throw it to somebody else in the room. Or it's almost like there's a point where I have to defer to these other people because you're not really competent, where that happens. Anybody had that experience? I know I've been in meetings where people have had that experience. Might happen with a service provider system. It might happen with an IEP, but they stop short of really giving you the opportunity to be the competent person. Alvar says yes, definitely. Alvar, if you have the energy, I'd love to hear how you handle that. Like how it's really very disrespectful, right? I mean, how do you support each other? How would you handle that situation? I know, okay, here, good. I'll keep talking if you guys don't talk. Chikora.
Yes, I have had that happen to me personally. Just trying to advocate for even my daughter and having her advocate for herself. People pick it up and then they start to kind of overtalk you and things like that and cut you off. And then they make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about. But what I do is I I politely say I let them, talk over me. And then I politely say, now will you allow me to talk and say and share what I would like to have, share. And even when they do cut me off, I'm like, I'm not done talking. Can I finish talking, please? And I won't allow them to go further with disrespecting me like that. I just keep on saying the same thing until they allow me to finish, and it's just really sad when people do that. It's just it's not right. They should allow you to, talk. And then especially with my daughter, sometimes I have to like, chime in when she's advocating for herself, and then let them know like really assertively, like she's not done talking and she needs to, express herself the way she want to express herself and stuff. And I don't like when people kind of finish your sentence for you. Like, no, that's not what I was meaning to say. So can you allow me to say what I was going to say? Because that's not what I wanted to say. So that's kind of what I do. I don't know.
Well, and I think I love that you are bringing this up, because I'm going to guess that people as parents or advocates for individuals in whatever setting you're in have that same experience. I mean, I was thinking when we wrote this that we were talking about the AAC users, but people will, I'm sure, say to you, yeah, we get it, we get it, we get it, and then go on their merry way as if they didn't get it, showing that they didn't get it, right? But they'll say, oh yeah, we get it, we get it, anyways, and we'll move on. And so I think, yeah, you're right. Parents and support people, you all probably have the exact same experience. Debbie says, my son is 38. AAC was starting to come out when he was young. Because he developed some language and because of the controversy, any lack of understanding its use at the time, AAC was not fully pursued. I find us at this time re-exploring its use to help with verbal language, help when verbal language is unreliable and more difficult to access. It's very exciting. Yeah, we have to remember this is a young field, isn't it? So, 38, 40 years ago, there weren't that many people using AAC. And so there are people who it didn't fit in the profile. No one knew how to use it. And you went along and learned what you learned. And now you got to go back and do something different. And Carrie said, I had a bus driver who thought my device was a toy. Oh my God. And here, people, how many people in this room, in this group, have heard people saying he only uses it as a toy? And here for you, Carrie, the bus driver thought it was a toy. And then I'll read Jackie's and then I'll open you up, Karen. Jackie says you should never be talked at or talked over whether you have a disability or not, in no way, shape, or form. Right. Karen.
Okay. Well, this kind of goes hand in hand with the competence issue and then what we're facing with teaching the clients, but also informing and teaching the community. This is a long one, I'm sorry. Okay, so for example, and I think you can relate to this, Darlene, I'm an independent facilitator. My daughter's 28 years old, is nonverbal autistic, has used AAC devices since kindergarten, has been in, was her school career, she was in regular education with supports, and that saved us with the AAC. It was hard working for it. We were talking back in 1999, 98, when AAC was very, very new. We went from the PECs, which was the big thing back then, to now she uses a Dynavox and other apps, that she's very comfortable with. Is hyperlexic, so she's a very good speller. And that's how she uses her device. She'd rather use a keyboard than use pictures or pages. She just prefers it that way. We do use pages to help her in the community to have conversations with others, but she's pretty picky. So she'll use the page to look at, but she'll go back to the keyboard to use. And sometimes that creates, more time for her to use. And that's, I think, again, where, the communication piece gets lost too, that people start talking over her, or they'll want to give her examples right away and stuff like that. And it's always an ongoing learning process for people, for her direct support or her ILS support to work with her. Because she doesn't use full sentences when I know she can, and getting her to talk about her emotions more because they're hard, breaking those down. We do a lot of social mapping to help her not perseverate on issues that she can't communicate about, even though she wants to tell us about something. But again, that one person you talked about with the yes and no question is like, okay, why are you saying that? I'm gonna get to this point. I'm gonna help you, right? You want to do that. So all these years, over 20 years, I've been working with this with my daughter. Now I'm finding working with other clients and my daughter when it comes to day programs or trying to get into a vocational program or any type of thing like that, the support. Because of that, we are in self-determination now. And that's supposed to help us try to get support and especially the one-on-one support in these areas to help her facilitate communication. And I'm getting the regional center telling us you can't do that because that support has to come directly from the day program. And it's like, well, no, I'm on self-determination. So we have this IPP issue and the SDP issue. And I feel like I have to write these contracts now between the self-determination or between the program that does both IPP and self-determination and say, no, we have a separate contract. You can't count this person as an IPP person. This person is separate. So you can't count him in your daily program. It's very confusing and it starts getting deeper. And so I just want to, find out if you have a lot of clients running into these issues, or even in seeking for jobs and they need support in a job, maybe just, in some of these areas. Since we've been in self-determination for a while, what are we doing, or is there an easier way to go about this instead of feeling like I have to create, contracts and assessments and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, I wrote this down because, so number one, I wrote this down because I think this is an important conversation, but Alvar might have touched on it, so I want to read what he said because I didn't read it yet. So we're going to bounce around for a second, but that's what we do in the AC world, right? We bounce around. So we can be tolerant of that. First of all, William said it's disrespectful and dehumanizing. They invite you to the table and then sit you at the children's table where you are seen and not heard. True. Sarah says, we are the advocate for our kids that can't talk with their voice. And Alvar, you say, I think it depends on the specific situation. When it's a professional or in another situation where there's a clear power dynamic and I need to get my needs met, which likely necessitates not aggravating them by calling them out on it as strongly as I might want to, I have to be more cautious. But I have a standard, clear and direct, but more delicate response. If that doesn't work, I try to have a support person reinforce it because unfortunately, those who act like that are more likely to listen to a speaking person. I also have a more intense version of calling, oops, it jumped, hang on. I also have calling that dehumanizing and unacceptable behavior when it's a situation I feel comfortable being more of an activist, or if folks aren't listening to my more gentle attempts. This reminds me I need to transfer those scripts from my old AAC to his eye gaze system. Oh, I'm glad you got your eye gaze system, Alvar. Awesome. You're gonna have to come on and talk with us one day so we can see you using your eye gaze system and talk about it. Not that we don't believe you, of course, it's just I wanna engage. Valerie says, is there a way to determine which type of AAC or approach is best matched for a mentally speaking adult without a sufficient, robust, and reliable means of communication? Supported communication, rapid prompting, spellers, various specific experiences with supported communication has varied so much in the past depending on the partner. Oh, that's a whole nother topic, Valerie. We'll come back to that. It's very important for support people to not only learn how to support communicators, but also to be comfortable demonstrating for the general community by slowing down and listening to the communicator. Yeah, and for this theme that's happening here, we have another prompt that we're going to talk about, the role of the communication support persons, or whatever the support person is for you. It might not be a communication person. But going back to what you brought up, Karen, I wrote this down, thankfully. So this popped in my head. Because it happens a lot. Regional Center provides you with supports, right? There are agencies out there They say, we are going to provide you with support. You want to go bowling, you want to go stay home and make crafts and sell them at the farmer's market, whatever you want to do. You can do whatever you want to do. We will provide you with staff, right? They say that. But then you're an AAC user and they don't support training their staff to be a support person of an AAC user or a person who has limited communication skills and is dependent on their communication partner in order to express themselves verbally, even with speech. But they don't train on that. I think that's where you're going with that, Karen. And has anybody had success fixing that problem? Because it's a toughie and it comes up all the time. Okay. All right. Thanks, Alvar. Anybody, you know what we mean? Like if you hire a support, you have to then train them yourself, and yet they're getting paid to be your support people. But they can't be your support people if they don't know how your supports are needed. It just is kind of a
That was my
dysfunctional
point.
circle.
Yeah, that was my point. I do have my daughter in a program only one day a week.
Mhm.
And we just verbally said, this is a contract between us that my daughter needs to have facilitated communication support. That support needs to be there for her because they are trained.
Mhm.
And the only way we could say that is they are trained by us, her team, because they've got years of training under their belt with Mary, and they can decipher or help her. If it's a behavior issue, they can help her communicate what's bothering her, that's where it's really hard. Like you said, some of them don't want to communicate negative things. She'll talk about all the proud things she wants to do and what she likes, but when it comes to negative things in her life, she doesn't like to communicate that. So it takes a process for her to facilitate her, to help her with that.
Well, it takes trust too, so you have to build
Yeah,
that in.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a problem. That I have a real problem with people saying they're hire us, and then saying we're not going to train our staff to do that for you. And I don't understand how come they get paid. It doesn't make sense to me. Let's see. Debbie says, yes, a general problem for all kinds of support issues. Who trains to support people? Right. So it isn't just a communication issue. It's anytime you have really personalized things issue is what I'm hearing. And William's saying something here, so. Debbie says, this is the only reason we entered SDP, to try and make a dent in this problem. Yeah. I think the SDP is the only way we can make a dent in this problem. William's getting his message in here. Alvar said he's dealing with the same thing, like can't be in the chat and type at the same time and communicate at the same time, so it takes two steps. William says, yes, we have had to advocate for training on my communication modality. If the vendor is denying the training, then go back to Regional Center as payer of the last resort. Yeah. I mean, definitely don't go get in a contract or get in a service plan with somebody who's saying we don't do that communication stuff. But sometimes they are, interested, but then when you say, well, we need this much support or this much training or these many hours, then they go, oh, we don't have that. So how are we to fix this? All right. Okay. Along this line that we've been talking about is this idea, and I know this comes up in assessments that I get called to contradict all the time. People think that they give you technology and that you're done, send you on your way, you're fixed. Everything's great. Talk about ableism, right? So AAC tools are powerful, but they don't guarantee communication. Freedom comes from the support, attitudes, and expectations of the people around the communicator. How does that impact you? The idea that you have a device, but that's not the answer. You need some support in some fashion. How does that fit for you all? Ken says, I have AT coaching built into my spending plan, and when my son meets with her over Zoom, I invite other service providers working with them on the call so they can get trained. That's how I get AT training support. Perfect. That's exactly what needs to happen. Yeah. It has to be built into the plan. Bernadette said, I found that families finally feel free to have providers train who they choose when SDP. Yep. Thank goodness, because not everybody makes a good communication partner. There are lots of us who would not make good communication partners for lots of different reasons. And doesn't make you, you might be good at something else for the person. You might be a great physical fitness coach, but not a good communication partner. You might be handy and great for the arts and support that person in their interest in arts, but not good in communication. I mean, all kinds of different scenarios could happen. But how do you get that across to people? Like you're saying, William, that I need, and Ken as well, we need training to go with this piece of equipment you gave us. Otherwise, it's not going to work. How are we going to get that through to people? Anybody have any ideas? Anybody have any success stories?
Maybe go to the main source.
Which would be?
Well, it would be the regional, right?
In regional center, in schools, it would be a school, right?
And then the schools, it would be the principal or the teachers there.
So if we were like all on the same screen, I would say show of hands. If we're in person, I'd say show of hands. Show of hands if they have said to you that you have to use your technology independently. Anybody have that happen? William, you've ever had that happen? Where you have to be independent before it counts? Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's a big deal. This whole idea that it doesn't count unless you're independent. Alvar, Alvar's raising his hand. Okay, go for it, Alvar. Bernadette says she's heard that, unfortunately. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Showing my hand. I get you. All right, gotcha. So Alvar showing his hand that people have said until you can do it independently, it doesn't count. I tell people when you're doing something independent, when you're talking to yourself independently, then you get a different kind of an IEP because you're talking to yourself, not talking to people. So either, I mean, communication is a two-way street. And we all, even those who of us are speaking people, we know people who can shut us down and make it so we don't talk anymore, right? And so that's a natural experience. And you who use AAC, I think, experience it, 20-fold, if not 100-fold. So to say you have to do something independent, do this independently, doesn't make sense for so many reasons.
I have, I Okay, so my daughter uses her 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 first, well, her device medically is a Toby Dynavox. We have to go to Medi-Cal or to her insurance to get it approved, to get it. Every year they approve it, but it doesn't come along with any training or anybody following through with that. I find that very interesting. Even though she's had a device for many years, why don't they follow up in some way with the clients to find out, like you said, oh, they must just be, they want it, they need it. Even with a speech, with medical speech, why isn't there a follow through with that? Why doesn't Medi-Cal have, I mean, why don't we have some of those? You know, we don't always want to have rules, but sometimes it would be nice to have that follow through. I know it's a lot easier nowadays to get apps online and, you know, on an iPad or whatever, but there's no training. I mean, sometimes they have pretty good training modules and stuff, but again, it's not according to what that person might need. And how does that person, you know, people need to know that person to help them communicate that.
It's kind of like when you call in to on the, you know, you call in for a survey or for questions for your credit card or something. And then you have the question, but it doesn't fit the numbers. Like there's no number 3 that fits or number 4 that fits. And you're like, I just want to talk to a person. It's that kind of thing, I think. It's the same, we all experience this, but we're not dependent on it the way you all are dependent on it. And so that's a thing. I'm going to go to, oh wait, William says, I think they should try using our AAC to run their meeting and see how independent they are without training or support. That's a great one. Because we all fumble at first, right? Yeah. And Nina, I'm going to come to you in a minute, but I want to say, Carrie, you said that you learned, wait, what did you say? You said something here. Oh, I got it. You guys are talking. I love it. So Carrie says, I never had a communication partner. Carrie, do you use someone who revoices for you sometimes? You ever have that? Or do you ever have a situation where, I mean, you don't have to, it's okay if you don't, but all these things go in the same category, right? If somebody uses somebody for revoicing, if somebody is dependent on another person to explain something that they can't explain in as great detail as the listener needs to hear. All these things, they all fall into the same category that sometimes if you don't say it, it doesn't count. If you personally don't say it, if someone says it for you, it doesn't count in other people's minds, right? Okay, I'm gonna come to you in a second, Alvar, and Nina, because I've missed you.
Yeah, well, this is such a great, as always, I've missed this so much. It's such a great conversation. It just keeps me thinking. And just let me say, I'm really good. I've gotten really good at screaming into the phone, representative, agent. I use all the different terms, and one way or another, one of those terms will trigger getting the person, and you know. But anyway, this is just so great. I just want to just again, this all, you know, everything everybody's been saying. Again, I have to say, I think the only, or it isn't, you know, the silver magic bullet, but it is the closest to having the, you know, having some chance of getting the kind of training support. I do believe it's self-determination, because I think, you know, I think it's the question of, as you're doing, you know, the budget, but more importantly, the spending plan of building in training hours, or however you want to reflect it. I mean, it is so important. It's really the efficacy of the entire thing depends on that training component. Whether the family has to do the training, or the, you know, maybe the one and only, the trusted supporter trains others, as someone else was saying. You know, I just think that we just have to keep on underscoring that, because I think of that for, you know, my son has a sort of disordered communication. He has his very particular communication style, and I realize how much time we spend having people learn what that means, you know, and learning how to do that. And self-determination is has been the only only situation that has enabled that. So it's worth doing it and keep trying, all avenues within that framework. It's just worth it. But anyway, it's so great this is so great.
Great to see you.
Great.
Miss you. Alvar has a good example here. He says, with my new eye gaze device, I watched over a day, over 24 hours of training videos, meant more so for the SOPs. While I was waiting for it, because my insurance didn't cover training for me or support people, just the device. Another huge issue for me is a lack of patience. When people aren't willing to wait for me to compose my messages, it's very frustrating for me. I hear that all the time from so many people. Yeah. So it's not really, I get that they make the training videos, but they really are assuming a lot if they think everybody will understand them enough to use the device. An eye gaze system is very sophisticated. And so if you're using it efficiently, Alvar, that's great, but there's so many people that would really need someone to walk them through some pieces for that. So yeah, to not get training hours doesn't make any sense. Okay, William says, I think they should try, oh, you said that, okay. In a different, Kathy added, in a different language like Japanese. And Carrie says that she's always learned how to do these things on her own. Bernadette says, I know a high schooler that can do so much with support, but has a health aide due to her physical impairments who are vocal about the diving lines, about what they do, that I think you're dividing lines maybe, about what they do, and communication is not, yeah, dividing, okay.
Sorry about that, yeah, dividing. Yes, and dividing. So, but educational supports are like, well, she has an aide already. She has a health aide, so they don't see the need to give her additional support because she has someone with her all the time.
You got to pick one.
But it's challenging if people don't want to be trained. And I know that's not exactly what we're talking about, but I've been in that perspective where I go in and I'm working with the AAC user directly. And the people around say, okay, well, did you train them? And they're just waiting for them to just take off and use it like firecrackers without thinking that they need to be involved whatsoever. And it's real unfortunate that sometimes even family members are thinking that the device is just some magical tool and they've had a couple of sessions with you. So thank you, goodbye, we should be done.
Exactly.
Not that simple.
And I in my head, sometimes I do say it out loud, but 90% of the time I say it in my head. But especially if you're going into a public school, for example, or a program of some sort, if you're a support person provided in a public school setting, you have an IEP, you're in a special ed setting or service provision, whatever you want to, wherever you're living. Why is this one thing you have to do independently really quickly? Like you get assistance to learn how to do math, you get assistance to learn how to read, you get assistance to learn how to cross the street, you get assistance to learn how to cook, all these other things, but not communication. Because the person's not sitting in class by themselves. They're not in a general ed class, for example, if we use a school setting, by themselves. We're talking about persons who need assistance for something. Maybe it's getting to the class. Maybe it's making sure your equipment's charged or your wheelchair battery's charged. Someone's assisting you, right? But you can have that assistance, but you can't have it for communication. Doesn't make sense to me. Thanks, Bernadette. People who are hearing impaired, William says, people who are hearing impaired have hands, but don't learn ASL until they are taught or get support. You're right. That's such a great one. You guys need to remember this one, okay? Copy that, put it down. That's a good one. Thank you, William. Carrie says, in the hospital and rehab, my family. So see, people help you, right, Carrie? And people, that needs to be accepted. And you need to be accepted rather as the communicator when that happens. I hope you haven't had any negative experiences, but
I like what Carrie put. He said that the family spoke up for me last year.
yeah, yeah, that's important. And you need to be listened to, right? And yet people need to know that we're speaking on behalf of Carrie. She needs you to hear this. Yeah. William says we need new expectations for AAC. Yeah, so the personal aid for health needs, same thing, behavior needs. They only handle behaviors. And yet they say behaviors are communicative. That part really gets me going. Yeah. Okay, I gotta go back and say Williams one more time. People who are hearing impaired have hands, but don't learn ASL until they're taught or get support. Blanca
One thing
says,
about,
go ahead.
sorry. One thing about IEPs when they're school age, so you can request an assessment for AAC, right?
Mhm.
The problem is even if you got the assessment and if they can talk, this is what we ran into with the client who got the assessment but really didn't get services for 2 years because she was verbal. Problem was is behaviorally again, she didn't like to talk about her emotions or she would just freeze. And even when you get an assessment and you get it on the IEP and you talk about training, we ask the questions, how are you going to train staff to help her use the device? How are you have to write goals? You have to remember, you have to write goals. If they're school age, if they become adults, it gets harder.
Mhm.
Absolutely. But you have to make sure you write goals in there because that's the law. That's her IEP. That's what they're supposed to follow.
Right.
Doesn't always work that way, but it is getting the professionals to want to train the staff and do enough assessing to see what that person needs. Really hard time. And because this client had SDP and they had the home team go to these meetings with them, they really couldn't, keep denying the service to her. Sooner or later, we finally got them to. I said, let's start having some one-on-one meetings with mom and start training her. And let's see. And then that's when we found out, oh, they didn't put anything together for the staff. They didn't put any social stories we talked about together. So it's a whole process that somebody needs to follow through with. Even though you have the professionals there, they don't even follow through with it.
I'm thinking, William, put this on your list of things to do, or anybody else who wants to do it. But I think someone, and it could be a few people, needs to write an article to present to ASHA or all of the above groups, whoever, the special ed, what are they called, SEPA directors, whoever gets magazines and things, special ed, about the fact that training and support and expectation of use has to be a part of this, of any of these recommendations that are made. Maybe we need to write something from a personal perspective, because the idea that there's a policy for it, that part's not happening. But maybe we need, so that people who are in school, people who are already working can understand that, because I don't think it's talked about so much. I think maybe my friend Skylar might be on here still. I don't know, maybe she's gone.
I'd love to be in a group to help support that for sure.
Yeah, I think that might be some project we could do. Blanca said regional center wants people independent, but don't care about communication. A huge barrier for my daughter is language. No one uses ASL. Right. Blanca, there is, I mean, you could call their bluff, and maybe we've tried this, but if they're going to insist on ASL as being her AAC system, then they should find you supports that understand and use ASL. the other part is that people can't be telling people which AAC system they're supposed to use based on their own wants. It's supposed to be the individual picks, you know? So that's an idea anyways for you, Blanca. But do you know, Kathy's saying this, do you know if the STP program, if it allows for staff group Zoom meetings? Yes, of course, absolutely. How do each staff person get paid if we can't bill for more than one staff at a time? Well, that's the part you put into your communication training. That's the part that William spends a great deal of time on, is making sure that there's enough time to bill to support the staff, all of the staff. But yes, you can have group meetings on Zoom. We do it all the time. I know some people make a group message and send information that there's a meeting. Yes, lots of different ways. You got to bring people together. Bernadette says, it's not talked about enough. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. Can AI interpret ASL?
That was a question I was going to ask too about can AI interpret ASL? I'm curious on that one.
I'm sure something can. You're going to have to ask AI. Somebody chat GPT
I think I will
that
do
question.
that.
Chat GPT the question. Okay, Shirley. I'm going to chat GPT while Shirley's talking.
There is an app, there's 2 apps on the market that you can sign into and it will interpret your signing. It's not exactly AI, but I'm sure if there's
really?
an app already to do that, then surely, yeah. There's some
Do you know what it's called?
Let me see real quick.
Bernadette's going to look that up for us. Okay. Shirley, go.
Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes. Quería aportar algo con relación al dispositivo de comunicación alternativa. Yo lo estuve pidiendo a través de la aseguranza. Mi hijo tiene 5 añitos. Estuve pidiéndole al centro regional. Al fin lo tuve el año pasado, este año que pasó a través del distrito escolar. Y es cierto, se le da el dispositivo, pero no se capacita, y eso fue una pregunta que le hice al patólogo de habla, la capacitación a los padres y también al personal, a su BII, a su BID, al maestro de ARC-SP, a todos los que involucran, porque es necesario que sepamos cómo usarlo, en qué momento, redirigir al niño para que se comunique. Y algo que dijeron hace poco, nosotros tenemos que ser proactivos. Yo no la he tenido aún, y la he buscado a través de otras agencias y lo estoy aplicando al punto que mi hijo actualmente, cuando ve que no lo entiendo, busca el dispositivo y me hace la selección de las palabras y ya lo entiendo. Y esto es algo que aun cuando hay que darle seguimiento, también nosotros tenemos que buscar la manera de también ayudar.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you pushed through because that's exactly what you need to do. I wish people could have offered some assistance along the way, but you did it, and so that's perfect. Let's see. You said your insurance. You said the school district, regional center, right? So nobody wrote into the assessment that you were also going to need training then. Or else that part was maybe denied.
So is that that's something that they lack to do?
No, sí me dijeron que es necesaria la capacitación, solo que como fue a mediados de marzo y él va a cambiar de escuela, me dijeron para el próximo año escolar, para que en la nueva escuela todo el mundo aproveche la capacitación. O sea, la van a dar ahorita en agosto, si Dios quiere.
That's more understandable now.
Okay. Okay, so yeah. You've got, yeah. Do you have, oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you have SDP? Self-determination funds?
Transición en agosto, si Dios quiere.
Okay, so put that in there for sure. Put in some kind of thing in your spending plan for support to you all. It doesn't have to be like weekly if you guys have got a good thing going, you know, but but you're gonna want every once in a while to go, hey, we've kind of hit a road bump here. And I need some help, you know, and there's agencies that can do that. And you can talk to me later about some things, but yeah, and Bernadette's available if she's available. I'm a speech person that's available. There's different ways that we can do this to help you out, because sometimes you do need help. Support. It's just support. It's just you have a question. It's like, am I done? Is this it? Should I do something else? What should I do? Right? And you got to bounce that off real people. Yeah. Let's see. William said, oh, here, Bernadette found something. Oh, no, wait. Yeah. A person changes, their AAC needs may change as well. Right. The Hand Talk uses AI for translating ASL. So there's an app, Hand Talk. Okay. Use that. Debbie, that's for you, I think, Debbie, right? I can't remember who had that sign language one. I think it was Debbie. William says, a critical and often overlooked component of ensuring success is comprehensive and ongoing staff training. Covered entities may have established good policies, but if frontline staff are not aware of them or do not know how to implement them, problems can arise. Covered entities should teach staff about the ADA's requirements for communicating effectively with people who have communication disabilities. Many local disability organizations, including Centers for Independent Living, conduct ADA trainings in their communities. The department's ADA information line can provide local contact information for these organizations. So I think what you're talking about, William, is getting people to understand that this is their job and that this is necessary.
Yeah, that was from the ADA document, Darlene. So the link's in there. It's in ADA about the training. So they can
there it is.
Yeah, and then
at 506, yeah.
Yeah, we've used that a few times when we've advocated for William.
Perfect.
IEP and IPPs.
Okay, great. Alexis says, I agree. My students were provided with AAC device and the staff did not get much training. This caused teachers to leave the AAC devices in their desks, backpacks, which is very disappointing. Yep. We walk into classrooms all the time and people will say, oh, we don't really use that. Oh, where is that? Oh, the battery's dead. All these things people say. And you're like, well, then how could, like, nobody else in the room, you didn't tell, then I see no one with duct tape on their mouth, except this guy, you know? Yeah. Debbie says, it is cheaper to not address the issue of ableism and inequality. It shows up in poor pay and no training. The money isn't there because the value is not believed in at a larger scale and institutional level. That's a great statement. It is on all our shoulders to keep showing up and keep speaking up. That is so true. You're saying, you know, the money isn't there because the value is not believed in at the larger social and institutional levels. Unfortunately. And Charlize, thank you. Great, thanks so much, Senor Darling. Okay, you're very welcome. Karen, you want to say something?
When you're in school and you run into classrooms and you find that the teachers are not using the device, you need to write a letter right away that they are not following I lost my train of thought.
With the IP.
Yeah, they're not, they're
out of compliance.
Out of compliance, absolutely. Yeah, it always, it's, you're going to have teachers that do that they just refuse to use it. I used to sub in classes and I would see that happening and that would drive me crazy. It's horrible. And if I would also recommend when a person is using a device and they're using it for, like my daughter did, she had to use it for her homework too because of her motor skills. She could write, but the process of her writing took longer than her using the keyboard. So she used the keyboard. She had to type her homework. She had to type the work out. So they had to have printers. I supplied the printers. in the classes in high school. We have like 5 different printers, but I got people to volunteer printers for her. But that sometimes it takes that. You have to be a squeaky wheel, and you have to definitely, if you have a person that says they're not going to use it, that is out of compliance.
Here's the other buzz phrase to pay attention to. I'm sure you've all heard it at least once in your lives. I already know what he wants. So people don't use a device because they say, I already know what he wants. Cool, because you're psychic? How do you know what he wants?
You do. You got a good point there. If you don't have goals in the IEP, if you don't have that, they need to, that it's written that they need to use this device to print workout, or that he has to use it for certain goals in the IEP, then are they out of compliance? You need to have goals written in the IEP.
Right, like you said before, goals are very, very important in an IEP. William says it's easier to construct denial when they limit access. Yep. Yep. Thank you for fixing that, Laura, for me. I already know what he wants. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's so often said. Or sometimes I'm not, this isn't a bashing session, but it's just a observation that gnaws at me. So sometimes when I walk into a setting, no one in the class is talking about anything important. And so they do already know what he wants because nobody has anything to say. Nobody has anybody talking to them. Nobody has any real valuable questions. I'll give an example of my aha moment. Years ago, I had a friend, well, maybe I've told you guys this before, I don't know. Ann Donnellan, Dr. Ann Donnellan, her son is a comedian and he teaches improv. And I had him come and teach, I think Kathy, you might have been there. I had him come and teach us about improv, because in improv, you build a story. And I had this aha moment and I said, hey, I bet you, John, what you're teaching improv, if we teach that to communication partners, people will build stories instead of just asking people to make requests. That's all people do is ask requests. So anyway, so John came in and I don't know anything about improv. And he doesn't really know anything about autism, even though his mom's Ann Donnellan. And so he's teaching the class and he says, hey, come, I want 2 actors to come up here. You guys are going to run a skit. It's going to be that the scene is that you are having a conversation while cooking. Okay. So the 2 people go up there, they start doing the skit, but these are special ed people. These are communication partners or parents that did this skit. I don't remember who did it, but they were not actors, right? They were just us kind of people. Go up there, and when they started talking about cooking, they started talking about, well, what do you need? You need some sugar, you need a bowl, you need a spoon. And they just kept going through this, what do you need thing, right? What are you gonna do next? Anyways, John let that go on for a little bit, and then he stopped everybody and he said, wait a minute, what's happening? Who talks about what you need when you're cooking? No one does. You talk about your husbands, you talk about your vacations, you talk about the new shoes you bought. You don't talk about the food and the spoon and the baking dish. But I had this aha moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what we teach people to talk about. And so in I call it special ed land. In special ed land, we teach people to tell you what they're doing, to tell you what they need next, as if that's a conversation. And it's not a conversation. So we have to have expectations, like William's saying, opportunities, and trained people who recognize and they don't squash these moments, as far as, and in addition to the access, right? So anyways, I had to tell you guys that story because it's what we're talking about. It's people just thinking, oh, he needs a vocabulary, but he doesn't need to use it. Kathy remembers. Okay, she was there. I thought you were. It was a long time ago, but it was my big aha moment. It changed a lot for me. Carrie says, has anyone seen Out of My Mind, the movie? Have not seen that, but I think I've seen trailers, I think. Debbie says it's not cheaper to address the issue. It is cheaper to address inequality. Okay, you said that already. All right, or I said that already. Alvar says 100% regarding Debbie. Thank you for naming that. I think so much of it is from that. So many people and our society overall does not value AAC users, disabled, and non-speaking people, which is why we have to prove competence and why support and training isn't provided, and so many of the other things we talk about at CAC. Value. William says we shouldn't just have AAC for goals. Communication should be the expectation to access life. Absolutely. Sharice says, very good example, Mrs. Darling. Yeah, it was a big deal. Bernard says, the movie's great. That's the movie you're talking about, Carrie. And it's a must-see for all. So it's called Out of My Mind. All right, we'll have to look it up. And Sarah.
Yes, my mom brought up a really good question, so I wanted to ask. Why is it when we have IEPs for our kids, because my son just had his first IEP before he starts school August 20th, but why is it when they want to get their word out, they're able to say it and they don't like being cut off, but then when you try to voice for your own child, they're like, oh, your child, we don't see that your child needs this. But then they have a diagnosis, but they just try to like ignore what you're saying and move on to another subject.
Right, which I think is what we were talking about at the beginning, where they're not presuming competence of you.
Yeah, my mom overheard it upstairs and she was like, oh, I have a question, and it just came back to my head. So I was like, okay, I'll ask.
No, it's exactly right. It's when, like you were talking, I forget who was saying that, but sorry for that. But we're talking about presuming competence for the AAC users, but you guys as parents also need to be presumed as competent, as understanding, as valuing, you know? And
but they try to shut you out. And that's the part that sucks, because we're trying to be the voice for our child. And they're like, oh, well, you don't need this and you don't need this. Well, here's my, psychological evaluation. Here's from the pediatrician and, through the regional. And in their eyes, oh, they don't need this, they don't need that, they can just do this.
Right. People, yeah. I had a guy who can use, he uses, I don't even know what he's doing. He's using an iPhone and an iPad. Very limited speaking individual, little kid, like, I don't know, maybe 10, using these multiple modes of technology, not communication. And he is creating these videos that would be on, like, people would put these videos into a game. If you were a video gamer designer, you would hire him at the age of 10. He's creating all these things. And so
that's amazing.
He's amazing. You know what his IEP said he needed for the assessment? A PEX board. What are you talking about?
That's unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. So they're going to argue that, of course, but hello, a PEX board. It made no sense whatsoever. But that's what they got to argue now about. Now they got to spend time arguing about that. Spend money arguing about that. It's a waste. Carrie says, I think cooking direction isn't helpful to AAC users. No. Oh, Carrie, you'll like the one when I went into the classroom and everyone who used a wheelchair was learning sight signs, like the community signs. And so again, my cuckoo mind went to, what are you doing? Like, if the person pushing the wheelchair doesn't know that that's a railroad crossing and they need to pay attention, that poor person in the chair is gonna go, what are they gonna do about it? Because they don't have a means of communication. Like, that's not a good use of their time. Someone's pushing their chair. That person needs to know that that's community sign says don't go down that road. It was like so bizarro. So same thing, cooking directions, yeah. Laura says there's so much money wasted on debating IEPs. It's a waste. Lack of assuming competence on both parents.
That's so true.
It's waste money. Yep. All right, you all. William, you got something? Yep. He says, haha, I got a needs improvement for technology skills. Oh my God. You serious? You guys should see William's technology setup.
I'm going to school for cybersecurity and networking.
Oh. Kathy says, do you know if the oh wait, no, that's different. Okay, sorry, Kathy, it jumped up again. Why did it do that? Oh, someone answered you. I asked someone who was in the program, this is Kylie said this. I asked someone who's in the program how they are able to have their staff meetings, and she said she had to put it in the spending plan and person-centered plan to be able to have the meetings. Okay.
Yeah, and you can call it training hours. You say staff training, and then you're not in that situation. You're not in that situation where, you know, everybody, you have 5 people are not with your, you know, it's not like you're having 5 people attend to your person at that time.
Right.
It's a entirely different thing. So ask for training hours.
Okay, that helpful. Thank you, Nina. William said that comment happened when he was 4th grade. Well, maybe you did need help in 4th grade, William. I don't know. If you did, you've mastered that goal, I should say. Albert says, I have 2 ideas for future, oh good, future CAC sessions. An open mic for AAC users, similar to how Miguel does sit-down comedy as opposed to stand-up. I feel like we could come up with fun title for it. I think we can. I love this. William, are you listening, William? An open mic. I'm kind of perseverating on the mic part. Okay. AAC users' mental health. Oh, that's a good one. I'm currently participating in a study about the experience of AAC users in accessing mental health care as well as while getting mental health care. The lead researcher was saying she decided to get her PhD to do this study since there seems to be a huge lack of education or research on all about it, and all people, including AAC non-speakers, have mental health. We all have mental health, yes, but some people have mental health issues, needs. In my previous work in social work, I did trainings about autism, and I'd always include an AAC 101 as well as a specific way in which it can impact case management and therapy sessions, etc. And so many folks would say after a training they had never thought of those things. I love it. And then I had some good personal experiences and some horrific ones. So I think it's an important topic. I know we've talked about physical health care, which can also be tough, but I'm not sure we've highlighted mental health. I love the mental health. Thanks, Bernadette, for joining us. And William says, nope, my parents bought me an iPad at home. At school, I had a textbook. Like this guy. Yeah. Okay, I gotta capture these notes from Alvar because I love this.
Darlene, I put them at the bottom of your document.
Oh, perfect. That's what I was gonna do. Excellent. Okay. Mind reading does exist. All right, perfect. I think this is a fun one. And I think the mental health, Alvar, I might reach out to you to find out who you're working with that's doing this PhD on mental health, so that we can maybe have that person come into the picture here. Okay, wow. This was a great session, I think, if I do say so myself. But I loved hearing from all of you. And I hope you feel, I know we didn't solve a lot of problems, maybe just some problems, but most importantly, I hope you feel supported in that you're not alone. Together we can all keep advocating, reminding people of these silly things they're saying out loud, the silly way they're approaching things, and just start changing the social narrative about people with disabilities, about AACUs, all the presumption consonants except when, all that kind of thing that you all are having to deal with all the time. William says, thanks everyone. Want to remind you, in case you just got on, that on September 11th in Oakland will be a self-determination program conference. And maybe Kylie, you can put that back in again, the registration form.
When's the next meeting?
Always on the 3rd Tuesday of the month. So that's a trick question for me because I gotta find out. It's the third Tuesday of the month. Let me look. I should know these things, but don't trust me. 15th. July 15th. And always a third Tuesday of the month. And then so it'll be on the SDP conference. There's 2 of them, one up north, one down here in the, Southern California. Up north, September 11th, LA, November 19th.
I'm
Okay?
sorry, what's in LA on November?
The Self-Determination Conference.
Oh, I see it right here.
Yeah, and so we'll have one in LA and one in Oakland. Okay? So
They're SDP and SDM, the supported decision making.
oh, that's
and
right,
SDM.
and SDM.
So
How can I forget
good
that?
yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what supported decision making is, especially Sarah, who's got a little 3-year-old, get involved, because supported decision making is about being able and to set yourself up with this alternative to conservatorship, which you're not thinking about conservatorship when your child's 3, but you should be thinking about how your child can learn to be a critical thinker so that they really can make these decisions for themselves, with everybody feeling completely confident, because especially as a parent, you get a little nervous sometimes. But no matter who your kid is, it's a little scary. But you want to trust that your child has been provided with all the opportunities that they deserve.
That's the registration link for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's the one. That's the Oakland one. I think, is there a different one for the LA one, Kylie?
It's the same topic. But I think
registration?
Its registration isn't open yet for Los Angeles because
Okay.
that's where
All right, we'll
Can
keep
I
it.
get an email when it's open?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can, if you
You get 6.
go to our newsletter and subscribe, we'll send out a message when it's.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you'll get tons of reminders. Okay, so thank you to our translators. Thank you to Kylie for helping us out. Thank you to all of you who participated, and even listening is participation, so thank you for that. William and I will see you, and the rest of the DVU group, we'll see you on July 15th. And